Hi everyone. Today I am recording the second episode in the series about Shirakalov's house. In this episode, I'd like to tell you about the state that the construction work was in at the beginning of 2022, comment on the planning, and share my thoughts on how the process unfolded, what I had anticipated before, and how things had changed once we got into it. To make sure this doesn't turn into some kind of a four-man's blog, I'd like to reference some information about how work on historical or heritage sites is done abroad. A while back, we visited several neighborhoods in Istanbul. We've also been to Ankara and on the islands near Istanbul. There is a clear difference in how heritage sites are approached in Ankara and Istanbul. That is to say that Ankara is predominantly an industrial city. There isn't that much in terms of heritage there. And on the other hand, Istanbul is a city of great history, overlapping cultures, with great density, and there are a lot of examples of such buildings. There are also many restrictions and legal obligations in place, set up by the city's administration, which ensure that Istanbul showcases its heritage in the most positive manner possible to anyone visiting the city.
презентовал свое наследие в максимально выигрышном свете тем большим потоком туристов со всего мира.
We think that this is the primary cause behind the care and attention given to the heritage sites there.
Почему наследие в таком хорошем вообще виде содержится?
For example, if there was an old wooden building and, let's say, it was lost to a fire, the city's administration would then insist and make sure that an exact replica of that house is built on that particular spot. Renovated objects, which were located in Istanbul neighborhoods that we visited, also demonstrated a rather, let's say, deep level of restoration. They were very thoroughly renovated, and this was evident to see, because these are very often semi-stone buildings, meaning only one story is wooden, and in most cases, that story simply features some struts that are sheathed with wooden panels on both sides. And we saw that in some instances such buildings were completely stripped down. The roofing was disassembled, and so was the first wooden floor, and then the building was recreated almost completely from that state. We have spent a great deal of effort to restore the wooden part of our house, eliminate some difficult, problematic, or straight-up rotten spots in the building. This process, of course, requires a lot of effort, a lot of resources, and in some cases, especially if it isn't such a large timber like what we have, it is probably going to be much easier to dismantle a wall completely and rebuild it again from scratch.
Полностью разбирать эту стену, да, и полностью с самого нуля ее воссоздавать.
It is evident that in Turkey everything works very well in terms of how the building process is organized. We understand that there are a lot of Turkish builders here in Russia. If I remember correctly, they are considered to be one of the best when it comes to cast-in-place concrete. They have a systematic approach to training qualified professionals and have many types of services available to the populace. That is to say that this service-based economy is very complex because of the overlapping cultures and the high density, and it also manifests itself in the way the spaces are organized and how they are subsequently used. There are various extensions, small courtyards and different terraces, where specific processes may occur, including service-based ones. Given that there are many industrial cities in Turkey, like Ankara, which I've already mentioned, I assume that there are a great deal of contractors who are capable of working with such types of buildings and structures, and I'm afraid the situation in Russia is considerably worse.
И боюсь, что ситуация намного лучше обстоит, чем в России.
For example, if an organization does major renovation of buildings in Kaliningrad, it should also restore the older houses, which were built before Kaliningrad was a Russian city. These particular buildings feature an abundance of decor. Moldings, windows, front doors, facade decorations, roofing, and anyone who does renovation work on these houses should also be capable of systematically dealing with restoring such elements. However, the market is simply not able to satisfy such a demand consistently and at a reasonable price. There is also an ongoing venture to restore front doors in that city, and here is how it came about. Initially, there was simply no way of easily obtaining a restored door, which serves, for instance, as the front door to the building. The city's administration has launched a program to train qualified restoration specialists, ones that would work with old carpentry objects. This program was not entirely state-sponsored, however, and although a large part of it was financed by the administration, the participants still had to pay a little bit themselves. For me, this approach feels right, in terms of people finishing, going all the way through, and completing the program. The motivation is simply different when you actually pay for the training. Besides, these are merely symbolic sums we're talking about. This is one of the ways in which such barriers can be lifted. But the fact that these barriers even exist is evident of the condition in which the construction industry finds itself. Right now, it is not at all oriented towards satisfying such a demand. For me, an especially interesting part of this project was to take a fresh look at such an old building from a contemporary perspective, because renovation implies bringing in modern, relevant functionalities and delicately inserting these processes into the building. In creating a floor plan for the house that would be used by a single family, I wondered if there was a way to plan ahead and incorporate opportunities for several families to be able to use the building in the future, for it to have the capacity to provide for several necessary processes to occur simultaneously. The building in its current state has one back entrance on the semi-basement level and one main entrance on the ground level, located on the front of the house. When we go in via the main entrance, we find ourselves on an interfloor area. The previous owner has replaced the wooden staircase with a new one, made out of reinforced concrete. We have decided to cut out a portion of the stairs so that in its ordinary state it would be used as a single structure that leads onto the elevated ground floor, but when necessary we would be able to lift up the cut part of the flight and have access to the semi-basement level from the initial interfloor area. The building already had partitions, newly constructed by the previous owner. However, we were intending to build partitions differently, in such a way that they would be visually distinguishable from the load-bearing walls, for us to easily see the modern part, for it to be highlighted more vibrantly. The previous owner has fully sheathed the ground floor with plasterboards, and regarding my inquiries about the condition of the timber, has said that everything was in perfect order, the timber was great, and the joints were very narrow. Nonetheless, I've decided to pry open the walls, and we found that it simply wasn't the case. The walls were in a very poor condition. Besides the fact that there were rotten parts present, the distance between the logs was enormous, and in certain places, and there were quite a few of them, you could easily fit your hand through the wall to the outside. The joints that we have considered as possible and the partitions which I already mentioned, if we take into consideration the dismantling process, were very difficult to realize up to a standard that we'd like. It also became apparent that many of the internal partitions made by the previous owner were in fact framed structures. They were simply struts finished with wooden panels, and it wasn't entirely clear what we were going to do with them. Keeping them as they were, simply sheathing them and waiting for the internal structures to rot completely wasn't an option. We had to begin restoring the timber and mending these problematic spots first and foremost. We didn't want to use new wooden fragments for partitions, we didn't have enough old timber for it, and it was rather difficult to make insets. So we've taken some materials we had from dismantling works, and now all the newly built partitions are made out of this very nice old brick. Let's now take a look at how the current floor plan looks, and during this virtual tour, I'll comment on the decisions we've made so far. We enter the building via the main entrance on Krasnoarmeyskaya Street and go up the stairs onto the elevated ground floor. This is room number 9 on the plan. Then we continue on to room number 10. In number 10, a fuse box for low voltage equipment and parts of the heating system are installed. This is done in such a way and very close to the entrance so that these may be easily accessed for maintenance without having to go too far into the living spaces. From room number 10, we can then go into room number 20. We can see that 2 sinks are installed here. Then there is a dedicated shower area with a window and a toilet bowl. It is currently planned for this to be the children's bathroom or a guest bathroom. From number 10, we can also get to room number 12. In number 12, a fireplace is installed, and there is also a chimney that goes down to another fireplace located on the semi-basement level. In the first episode, I mentioned that this building did originally have several furnaces, and this is one of the decisions by which we are contributing to the continuity of this implicit history. The furnaces were already dismantled at the time of the purchase, so naturally I wanted to install something in their place. One fireplace is located on the semi-basement floor next to the kitchen space and has a dedicated cooking compartment. Another fireplace is located in number 12. This one has a special lid, which allows us to safely heat something up on it, a kettle for instance. And another one yet in room number 18, the bedroom. Back to room number 12 though. This is the family living room. Its primary purpose is to provide a secondary space for family members. In case the main living room is occupied by some other process, they can gather here and spend time together, maybe play some board games or perhaps simply lounge. It is also here in number 12 that a ladder to the attic is going to be installed. On the plan we then have room number 14. This is a small distribution point between the children's room and the bedroom. From here we can also access number 17, which is the dressing room. Number 17 also has 2 other exits. On the bottom to room number 19, the bathroom, and on the top to room number 18, the bedroom, where the fireplace we've talked about is installed. Let's now go back to number 14. From here we can continue on into room number 16. This is a rather large, spacious room, perhaps the best room in the house in terms of its visual qualities. It has 6 windows and excellent views out of them, onto the crossroads and the church. Right now we plan for this to be the children's room with several beds. We are thinking of bunk beds for now. In order to proceed, we now return to the main stairs, which we used to get onto the elevated ground floor when we first came in. This time, however, we will descend onto the semi-basement level. We immediately find ourselves in room number 8. From here we can enter room number 7, the boiler room. Another exit from number 8 leads into room number 1. Number 1 is an entrance hall. Here another entrance is located, which leads to the yard. On the bottom of number 1 on the plan, there is a niche in the wall which is going to be used as an easily accessible closet where you can hang your clothes once you get inside through this entrance. From number 1 we can also enter room number 2, the utility bathroom. There a household block and some racks for cleaning chemicals are located. A stainless steel sink is to be installed later. This room also features a hygienic shower and a dedicated shower area. intended to be used to wash the dog's paws after taking it for a walk, for instance. Going the other way from room number 1, we can enter room number 3, which is a large storage space. Our intention is that this room will house a pantry for groceries, serve as a storage area for sporting equipment, and hold seasonal clothing and footwear. Dressers will be placed by the windows.
Ну и в том числе вот какие-то комоды, которые будут размещаться рядом с окнами в этом помещении.
Having gone through this space, we now enter room number 4, where dedicated cooking fireplace is located. It will also have a large dining table and provide quick access to an area designated as number 5 on the plan, the kitchen area. And finally, the attic floor is simply a large open space with a pitched roof and 2 skylights. I would now like to show you how the building looks in its current state. Behind the house you can see some roofs. The closest to us is the other house on the neighboring plot of land, which I mentioned in the first episode. That building used to be part of the complex, so reuniting the two parts in their original state provides for a nice historically accurate turn of events in this renovation process. This is what the yard looks like right now. We had the fence and the gates installed. I have a rather high-bodied car, and the standard lintel doesn't work, so a new one will be fitted instead. We went for a matte black color on the inside of the fence and simply used ferrous metal sheets on the outside. Our intention is that they get rusty and gain a certain resemblance to the brick surrounding it. As you can see here, the arches above the windows of the semi-basement floor are either in disrepair or absent. It's also important to note that their design solution is different to the ones on the other sides of the house. This is because these windows were fitted at a later stage, and these openings were cut out specially for them. We can see that there is no lining here, they just used cement mortar instead. We will mount new windows and recreate the original brickwork, like the one that is still intact on the other side. Here are some more arches. These feature the remainder of the original patio on the slopes, but it's barely holding. You can also see fragments of the blind area that was done previously. And these are the surviving original arches from the original brickwork. They were here from the very beginning. You can also see the vent exits here, one between the second to last and the last window, and another one, albeit bricked up, between the first and the second. This means that the wooden subfloors in the semi-basement had ventilation exits that led directly to the outside. We initially thought that these were somehow connected to the furnace system, but it turned out that they weren't. This is what the main entrance looks like right now. I ripped the covering off myself, and we can see the remaining wooden elements. I wanted to have a look at the original door. Okay, we're inside now. Here, we took off the plasterboard sheathing, which was installed as part of the pre-sale preparations. So, we took it off and saw that there was rotten timber. Here you can see 2 of the logs. We are doing the roughing now, and the timber is being polished. We intend to fill in these gaps and cavities with a mixture, perhaps PVA and sawdust, or PVA and caulk, we'll see.
Может быть пробка с ПВА, посмотрим.
This is where the wide reinforced concrete stairs were. We have cut out this half in order to have access to the basement. We can see some old screeds there in the corner made of metal elements. What we're going to do with the old part is unclear as of now, but here is the new brickwork, and we're installing the new fuse box as well. We have removed the old tiles, which were laid by the previous owner, and we intend to lay new PVC tiles here instead. The previous foreman has decided to not do anything about this part here, although you can clearly see that this wall is not in a good condition at all. There is a gap down there through which you can again quite literally see the outside. We are going to dismantle this part of the wall and think of some sort of a solution. This will probably need fixing on the outside as well. These window slopes are going to be sanded down. There is enough thickness here, about 2 centimeters, and we'll have more than enough headroom to lay the tiles afterwards. There are some of the openings in the logs, which perhaps also housed furnace air ducts previously. And here some fragments are missing as well. Up here we've mounted a temporary electrical cable which runs along the edge of this molding. It's new, but we are going to keep it anyway. This is where the chimneys are. One leads to the fireplace in the basement and another to this fireplace standing here beneath the wrap. On their other ends both lead up through the roof and to the outside. This is an example of our brickwork, and these pillars were done by the previous owner. This is another opening left from the old furnace system, as well as part of the original timber which we'd like to keep. If we go through here, we can see one of the new fireplaces. The furnace itself has already been installed, as well as the chimney. We're in number 18 right now, and as you can see, the room mostly features wooden surfaces and old brick. And in the room opposite, number 19 on the plan, another bathroom, with a wooden wall which we're intending to preserve as it is, and some parts here already finished. We're currently cutting out some openings to install sewage systems. We have some bearing elements like this, and then there's this opening, which is going to be the entrance to the attic. We are now beneath the stairs at the entrance. Some systems have already been installed. Here are some cables. And the boiler room is mostly assembled too. There are 2 boilers here, a GSM module and the piping, which leads to the heated floors and the radiators. If you can see anything now, this is the back entrance which leads directly onto this level. And here we have the beginnings of a bathroom, but it's probably too dark to see. This brickwork here is new, made by the previous owner, and these partitions are the ones we've made from the old brick we are using throughout. That's also the heated floor system, as you can see. This new red brick and the ceiling was sandblasted to remove all the unwanted bits and pieces. And now here we can see exactly what I meant when we were discussing the brickwork and the windows. These are the original brick arches. We intend to replace the windows themselves, however. And these are the newly cut windows, and we can examine the so-called new brickwork, meaning the openings were simply cut and the beam was placed across the top. So instead of this, we're going to recreate the original brick arches. The new windows feature wooden boxes with rebates. These will be removed, and we are going to replace them with brickwork as well. And here's one more look at the original brickwork itself. This room is being prepared for the installation of the floor finish. We need to once again remove all the dust from the walls, cover the brickwork with a protective solution, and then lay PVC tiles here. And this is the end of the chimney that we saw upstairs earlier. Underneath it we'll install another fireplace. After the previous episode, I received questions about the survey I've asked you to take. The questions were mostly about how abruptly it was introduced and how it wasn't entirely clear where it came from or why I am asking you to take it. The thing is, I am currently the CEO of an autonomous non-profit organization, Environmental Design and Sustainable Development. And one of our projects is a home studies-based research that we are carrying out. And as part of this effort, we are conducting the socio-cultural research about the notion of home in Russia. Research of this kind is rather widespread abroad, but these topics here are studied more formally and therefore don't yield the same amount of quality information. There are a lot of regulatory recommendation documents, like the Standard for Complex Territory Development, which could receive some amendments based on some more thorough research into the notion of home, as well as socio-cultural phenomena. That is to say that everything that goes on in the real world should somehow serve human needs, and for that we need of course to understand what these needs consist of. Home supports a person's psyche, supports the sense of meaning and purpose, and it is important to talk about these topics, important to study them. How it is all interconnected, what do people associate with all of this? What would a person like to see in their future current accommodation? What does this term even mean? What significance does it hold for different segments of the population? For home studies research, it is common to not only try and make sense of the terms and what they mean for different people, but also to examine the processes which occur at home or within home. We are of course talking about the physical aspect, how people express themselves within a space. The topic of home is very relevant on the governmental level as well. In countries like Finland, for instance, the term hygge is widely known, meaning a person's sense of belonging to something, some place or space, and the associated feeling of protection and comfort. Our professional networking experience shows that this is a topic of interest not only for the academic community, but also for the general public as well. Even when taking the survey, you might think of something you haven't considered before and unveil some new meanings for yourself. This is how the questionnaire came about, and I'd like to take this opportunity to once again invite you to contribute to this research. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you. I also wanted to address a question about the format of the videos we're doing. Someone asked in which direction do I see the channel going in the future? More towards describing my personal experience or more towards discussing some professional and formal topics? I don't really have an answer to this one, because to me, these are the two different sides that constitute the whole. You could say that I am conducting an experiment on myself, meaning that while I am engaged in this renovation process, I also try my best to provide a participant observation of this practice. For now, let's just say that the format is highly flexible, and I see purpose in combining my personal observations and emotions evoked by this process with professional information, which I try to integrate into these videos.
И той информации профессиональной, которую я тоже хотел бы в эти видео интегрировать.
If you have any suggestions or recommendations, please feel free to leave a comment. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Furthermore, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel or considered following our Яндекс.Дзен channel or our Telegram blog. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know if you are in favor of this more mixed type of a format. Thank you, and until next time.